Beneath the quiet waves of the Atlantic Ocean lies a forgotten web of steel and copper, a secret network that changed the world long before satellites or the internet ever existed. Imagine a time when a message from London to New York took weeks to cross the ocean by ship. Then, in a single moment, that same message could travel in minutes through a cable hidden under thousands of miles of sea. This is the story of the submarine cables, the invisible arteries that connected two continents and reshaped global power, commerce, and communication forever. In the mid-1800s, the world was vast, disconnected, and painfully slow. Letters carried across the Atlantic by ship took 10 days, sometimes more than a month. But a new invention, the telegraph, promised instant communication through electric signals. The challenge was enormous. How to stretch a single wire across 2,000 miles of ocean floor between the old world and the new. The idea first emerged in Britain, the industrial heart of the 19th century. Engineers, visionaries, and investors gathered around one ambitious goal: to connect Britain to America through a telegraph cable under the sea. The man who led the charge was Cyrus West Field, a wealthy American businessman with an obsession that bordered on madness. Field's dream was bold: to unite the world through communication. With backing from British telegraph experts and American investors, he set out to do what no one had ever done: to lay the first transatlantic cable. In 1858, after years of planning and failed attempts, the world watched as two great ships, the British HMS Agamemnon and the American USS Niagara, set sail from opposite sides of the Atlantic, carrying the delicate copper cable that would link Europe and America. It was one of the most daring engineering feats of the 19th century. Storms battered the ships, cables snapped under pressure, and each setback cost thousands of pounds. But finally, after countless failures, the two ships met in the middle of the ocean, connected their cables, and completed the link between Ireland and Newfoundland. When the first message finally traveled through, from Queen Victoria to President James Buchanan, it took 16 hours to send, but it was a miracle. For the first time in history, the old world and the new were speaking directly across the sea. Crowds cheered, cannons fired, and newspapers declared it the beginning of a new age. But the celebration didn't last long. Within weeks, the cable failed. The insulation had deteriorated, and the line went silent. Skeptics laughed. The dream seemed dead. Yet behind closed doors, British and American engineers refused to give up. They quietly began redesigning the system, this time using improved insulation, stronger copper wires, and new ships built specifically for laying cables. One of them, the Great Eastern, was the largest ship in the world at the time, so massive that it could carry thousands of miles of coiled cable in its belly. In 1866, with the world watching and doubting, the Great Eastern successfully laid a new transatlantic cable, thicker, more durable, and able to transmit messages faster than ever before. That single moment changed everything. The world had entered the age of instant communication. Once Britain saw the power of this technology, it moved quickly. The British Empire began laying cables across the world, to India, Australia, Africa, and Canada, creating what came to be called the All-Red Line, a secret network of cables that connected every corner of the empire. This gave Britain not just communication power, but strategic dominance. During wars and political crises, Britain could send orders, gather intelligence, and control trade routes faster than any rival nation. America, too, soon followed, building its own cable routes across the Pacific and Atlantic. By the early 1900s, the ocean floor was crisscrossed with cables. Messages that once took weeks now traveled in seconds. Diplomats, military leaders, and financial traders used these hidden lines to shape the modern world. A world where information meant power. But these cables weren't just tools of communication. They were instruments of espionage and control. During both World Wars, Britain and America secretly tapped into submarine cables to intercept enemy messages. In 1914, when the First World War broke out, British naval forces cut Germany's undersea cables on the first day of war, isolating it from the global network. During the Cold War, the US and UK developed advanced systems to monitor submarine lines, using them to track Soviet movements and gather intelligence. Even today, the same ocean floors that carried those 19th-century cables now hold the fiber optic lines that power our internet. The old copper wires may have corroded, but the network they inspired still controls the world's communication, silently, invisibly, beneath the waves. The story of the Transatlantic Cable is a story of connection, not just between continents, but between people and ideas. It shrank the world, changed economies, and paved the way for everything from global trade to the digital age we live in today. Every text, email, or video call you make traces its roots back to those brave engineers who dared to drop a wire into the unknown depths of the Atlantic more than 160 years ago. Beneath the ocean, their legacy still hums in silence, the hum of progress, of ambition, of humanity's desire to stay connected no matter how wide the ocean between us. Hidden deep in the wilderness of the American West lies a truth seldom told. The epic expeditions that opened the frontier would have failed without the knowledge, strength, and courage of indigenous guides, men and women whose names have been erased from history books. In the early 1800s, as explorers, geographers, and the U.S. government pressed westward into unknown terrain, they relied on local Native American guides who knew the land's secrets: where to find water, how to survive winter storms, which paths the animals took, and how to negotiate with neighboring tribes. These vital figures often remain invisible in the grand stories of westward expansion. From the journals of Sacagawea guiding the Lewis and Clark expedition to lesser-known Lakota, Ute, and Paiute scouts, indigenous knowledge shaped every mile of that journey. Sacagawea, a Lemhi Shoshone woman, carried a newborn across the continent and translated for Lewis and Clark, helping them secure horses and safe passage. But beyond the famous few, countless unnamed indigenous guides quietly helped American explorers map rivers, cross mountain passes, and establish trade routes, their stories rarely recorded, their names often omitted. Consider the 1776 expedition of Dominguez Escalante expedition into the Colorado Plateau. Though the Catholic friars receive credit, they were led by Timpanogos Ute guides, Silvestre, Joaquin, and Jose Maria, who knew the ravines, springs, and safe winter camps. Wikipedia. Their presence transformed the journey from near disaster into one with a documented route for future travelers, yet their names remain footnotes at best. Why were so many guides erased from history? The story lies in the power dynamics of colonization. The dominant narratives celebrated European explorers as heroes and pioneers while marginalizing the indigenous people who enabled those feats. Only a handful of guides appear in journals, and even when they do, they are described generically as interpreters or guides, not acknowledged as sovereign actors with their own stories, motives, and culture. As the U.S. expanded its reach westward, these indigenous guides often waited in the shadows of treaties, forts, and railroad surveys. Their deep knowledge of terrain, climate, and tribal relationships gave them unmatched value. Guiding expeditions required diplomacy, survival skills, and trust between radically different cultures. Yet once the map was drawn and settlers arrived, the guide's role was forgotten. The narrative shifted to discovery, and the land was recast as empty wilderness. In many cases, guides were coerced, treated as interpreters, scouts or laborers, not respected as indispensable partners. Their names were omitted when reports were written for Congress, textbooks, or popular magazines. Their contributions lost to time. Native oral traditions often hold these names and stories, but written history rarely privileges them. Modern historians and indigenous scholars are working to correct that omission. Archives are being revisited, expedition journals cross-referenced with tribal records and oral histories, recognizing figures like Black Beaver, Seket Tumekwa, a Lenape guide whose roots helped thousands of emigrants across the Great Plains, offers a glimpse into the broader truth of indigenous guiding. Wikipedia. The process of naming these invisible guides matters. It restores identity, recognizes agency, and rewrites the history of the West from the perspective of those who helped build it. What does this mean for us today? When we visit national parks, drive the old wagon roads, or read about frontier exploration, we owe part of that experience to indigenous knowledge passed from guide to settler to student. A turn of the map, a safe river crossing, a correctly interpreted sign from the land. These were the legacies of unseen guides. Acknowledging them reshapes our understanding of American history, from heroic lone explorers to collaborative journeys where indigenous people were protagonists, not afterthoughts. In a world increasingly aware of marginalized voices and hidden histories, the story of indigenous guides is a chance to rethink the American West. It invites us to ask, who else remains invisible in our stories? Who traveled beside the names we know and yet never received their own entry? As we move forward, these hidden names deserve a place in the history books, and their stories deserve to be told. If you liked our video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.